practice run, the loser flew over the wall and crashed into a pole.
An Olympic athlete collided with machinery at 158 miles per hour, and officials told the spectators nothing. This is just one tragedy that they tried to bury because these are 7 Olympic tragedies so horrific that they were almost erased from history. Before we expose the deaths at the Olympics, hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on the world's biggest horrors. Nicolas Bochatay. Starting this list off with speed skiing, which was supposed to be the future of winter sports, and this particular event at the 1992 Olympics in Albertville turned dark. France wanted to showcase the absolute limit of what human velocity on snow could do, and athletes were wearing the beautiful, owl futuristic suits that made them look more like astronauts than skiers. They would go down impossibly steep slopes at speeds that were approaching 160 miles per hour. It was painful just to think about, and now it was about to become deadly. Nicolas Bochatay was a Swiss speed skier who had dedicated years to mastering one of the hardest and most dangerous sports that were ever attempted at the Olympics. Unlike traditional downhill racing, where technique and precision mattered as much as speed skiing had one objective: go as fast as physically possible and just pray to God that nothing goes wrong. Bochatay was already killing it in the preliminary rounds, securing his spot in the final that was scheduled for later that day on February 22nd, 1992. Everything seemed to be going according to his plan. He was in his peak condition, his equipment was dialed in, and he was about to compete on the biggest stage of his life. That particular morning, Bochatay and several other athletes decided to do a routine warm-up run on public slow practice to lose muscle and get the overall feel for how it would go. Nothing about it should have been dangerous. But as Bochatay led the group down the mountain, he saw a small rise in the terrain. What he couldn't see from his position was what waited on the other side: a massive snow grooming machine, an industrial vehicle that is used to maintain ski slopes, sitting directly in his path. Nicolas was traveling at extraordinary speed. Some reports even suggest he was pushing about 80 miles per hour during his casual warm-up. So as he jumped the hill, in just half a second before the impact, there was no time to turn, no distance to brake, and no possibility to avoid the collision. He got slammed directly into the heavy machinery at full force. The impact was so catastrophic that he was killed instantly, and his body absorbed the force that no human could ever survive. But here's what makes it even more terrifying. The Olympics officials made no public service announcement about what had happened. Thousands of spectators had gathered for the speed skiing later that day, excited to watch one of the world's fastest skiers compete for the glory. But they had no idea that one champ had already died: Ross Milne. But if Nicolas' case seemed absurd to you, wait till you hear a moment when officials blamed the victim instead of the course. Ross Milne was just 19 when he became Australia's great hope for alpine skiing at the 1964 Winter Olympics in Innsbruck, Austria. For a country that was known more for surfing and sunshine than snow sports, sending a competitive downhill skier to the Olympics was one of the largest moments of national pride for the Australians. Milne had trained to an amazing degree, determined to prove that Australians were more than cricket and surfing, and that they could compete with the European powerhouses. He dominated winter sports, but the 1964 Games had other plans, and it was plagued with problems from the start. A severe lack of snowfall forced organizers to literally haul in snow from other parts of Austria to cover the course. But here's the thing: the snow that they imported didn't compact properly, creating unpredictable and inconsistent conditions that made high-speed racing quite dangerous. Even more concerning is that the downhill course lacked basic safety infrastructure, as there were no proper barriers or padding sections where skiers had to navigate tree trunks while traveling 60 to 70 kilometers per hour. Then came January 1925, when during a practice run, Milne launched down the mountain, carving through the snow with precision and fearlessness. But as he approached one of the steepest sections of the course, something absurd happened. There were people on the track. In a high-speed event like downhill skiing, having anyone in the competition zone is insanely dangerous and should not happen in the first place. But somehow, course workers or officials had wandered into Milne's path, and in a desperate split-second decision to avoid hitting them, he swerved hard to the side. This sudden speed movement caused him to lose control entirely. His body was hurled off the course, and he crashed violently into a tree at the edge of the run. This impact knocked him unconscious immediately, and he was airlifted to a hospital. However, his injuries were catastrophic, as he had severe head trauma and internal damage that the 1964 medical technology had no hope of treating. Ross Milne died without ever regaining consciousness, becoming the second fatality of the 1964 Winter Olympics. His death should have prompted an immediate inquiry into the course conditions and the presence of people. Instead, the Olympics did something even more disgusting. They blamed Milne himself. Bahman Golbarnezhad.
For confirmation as to who may have won this race. Basically, we wonder if can you finish.
Next is one of the most heartbreaking stories in Olympic history, precisely because of how much Bahman needed to overcome before the tragedy happened. During the Iran-Iraq War, one of the longest and bloodiest conflicts of the 20th century, Bahman served the country with distinction. In combat, he suffered catastrophic injuries, including spinal damage that left him paralyzed from the waist down. For most people, this would be the end of their athletic aspirations. But for him, it was just the beginning. Since he was unable to pursue the love of competitive sports, he channeled his determination into Paralympic weightlifting. For years, he dominated the sport, earning an incredible 12 gold medals and even 2 silver medals in international competition history. His upper body strength was legendary, and his mental toughness was something no one could argue against. Then in 2006, a shoulder injury forced him to retire from weightlifting. Here, most people would accept that this would be their end, but for Bahman, it was just the beginning. 10 years later, at the 2016 Paralympic Games in Rio de Janeiro, he proudly represented Iran in the C4 category for disabled athletes. Here, he built a new career in a different sport, and it was the road cycling course in Rio that was notoriously difficult. During a high-speed downhill section of the race, a disaster occurred when Bahman's bike went off course. A lot of people say it could be a mechanical failure or a misjudgment of the road conditions, but whatever happened, it was his end. He collided with a jagged rock formation at tremendous speed, despite wearing a helmet and following every safety protocol. The head injury was sustained and ended his life. Emergency responders worked overtime to save him, even performing CPR and rushing him to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. His heart stopped en route to medical care. If you want to stay up to date with the most horrific disasters in the world, do subscribe to our channel. Francisco Lazaro.
Francisco greased his body with a layer of animal fat, believing that it would prevent sunburn and help improve his performance. Shortly after the competition started, however, it became apparent that this decision produced an...
Now let's talk about Francisco Lazaro's story, which begins in the early 20th century in Portugal. There he worked as a carpenter by day and trained as a distance runner whenever he got the time. He was an amateur in the truest sense, and a working-class man with extraordinary talent and determination, but with limited resources. Despite these constraints, he already won 3 national marathon titles, which earned him the honor of becoming Portugal's first ever Olympic representative at the 1912 Stockholm Games. Then came July 14, 1912, and it was the day of the Olympic marathon where Stockholm was suffering through a brutal heat. The temperatures soared to dangerous levels, but most suggest that it was well over 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Out of 95 athletes who had registered for the marathon, 68 actually started the race, which is around a 30% dropout. The course was around 40 kilometers long, and wearing bib number 518, Lazaro started strong, but as the race progressed past the 30-kilometer mark, his body began shutting down without warning. He collapsed unconscious on the road and never got back up.
At the 30-kilometer mark, he collapsed once again, but was unable to get back up. Doctors, recognizing the dire state he was in, promptly rushed him to the Seraphim Hospital. He was recorded with an internal body temperature of 41 degrees Celsius, or almost 106 degrees Fahrenheit.
Nodar Kumartashvili.
Practice run, the luger flew over the wall and crashed into a pole.
Georgia produces the world's most badass behemoth of athletes, and the 2010 Winter Olympics should have been a celebration of athletic achievement. Instead, it opened with a tragedy that no one would ever. Nodar was a 21-year-old Georgian luger from a family of Olympic athletes. In the days before the opening ceremony, the Whistler Sliding Center had already proven quite odd. Multiple athletes crashed during practice runs, including the Romanian luger Violeta Strămăturaru, who suffered serious injuries, and American Tony Benchop, who escaped with minor injuries. Even experienced competitors were struggling with the track's extreme design, and engineers had recorded speeds of 45 miles per hour, which was far beyond what was considered safe for luge competition. Then on February 12th, during the final training run before competition, Nodar entered the course's notorious final turns, traveling at approximately 90 miles per hour. His sled was unstable, and it veered off course, where he was ejected from the track, striking right into one padded steel support beam with the force that was brutal. His teammate and best friend Levon witnessed the crash. Paramedics performed CPR, but he died from his injuries. He never competed in the Olympics that he had trained his entire life to reach. The official response initially blamed the athlete, suggesting that Nodar had made mistakes. However, it outraged the luge community and safety experts who had warned of the track's dangers for months. Kazimierz Skorzypewski. Kazimierz was an unusual Olympic athlete in almost every respect. At the age of 55, he was the oldest competitor in the luge event at the 1964 Innsbruck Winter Olympics, which earned him the affectionate nickname Uncle from younger athletes. He was Polish-born but represented Great Britain, and his physical condition was at its peak, proving that age is just a number. But then in 1964, the luge track at Innsbruck was poorly maintained with section waterlogged ice creating unpredictable conditions. Many athletes crashed more frequently than they completed the runs, yet organizers had no safety improvements. During a practice run on January 23rd, Kazimierz's sled became unstable and veered off the track, and he was thrown from his sled at shockingly high speed to the frozen ground with a devastating impact that shattered his skull and pelvis. He was rushed to the hospital, where a surgeon attempted an emergency procedure, but his injuries were too severe. He died the following morning, becoming the first fatality of the 1964 Games. Rather than examine the hazardous track, officials decided to blame it on his age. Those who knew him rejected the explanation because his experience as a pilot had honed his reflexes and spatial awareness much more than an average human being. Munich Massacre.
The Olympic Village. Their target, the Israeli Olympic team. Their goal, global attention and deadly demands.
At number 1, while it is not a sporting accident, we don't see the discussions of Olympic tragedies. The Olympic tragedy, called the Munich Massacre of 1972, was the darkest moment in Olympic history. On September 5th, 1972, members of the Palestinian terrorist group called Black September infiltrated the Olympic Village in Munich, Germany, taking 11 Israeli athletes and coaches hostage. The series then ended in disaster when a botched rescue attempt at a military airfield resulted in the death of all 11 hostages, along with the German police officer and 5 of the terrorists. The victims were Josef Romano, wrestlers Mark Slavin, Eliezer Halfin, Josef Gutfreund, Kehat Shor, Zeev Friedman, David Berger, and fencing coach Andre Spitzer, shooting coach Kehat Shor, and weightlifting judge Yakov Springer. After 34 hours, Olympic organizers controversially decided to continue the game with a memorial service. But in reality, this was the darkest moment in Olympic history. All these athletes didn't die in vain. They exposed every safety barrier, every medical protocol, and every security measure that were flawed back when these tragedies happened. Drop a comment sharing which safety reform you think was the most important, and subscribe to the channel if you want us to expose the dark side of the world.